So let's get started.
So I found a really fun and easy way to attach our binding strips or any sort of sashing strips that you might have. So here's my method. So I thought I would do another video on how I attach my binding strips, because my first video I used muslin and it was kind of hard to tell the difference between the right side and the wrong side. So these strips are kind of a black design on the right side, and then this is the wrong side. So these are 2.5 inch strips. And so I just keep the remaining or the extra strips in my lap, and I like to use the block lock to draw my line, and but I'll show it using just a regular square ruler as well. So the first thing I do is I take the first strip and I lay it wrong side up, and I lay it at a 45 across my table, and I place my block lock so that the block lock logo is at the bottom, and I just push it up against the this edge here so it locks right in. And a lot of times we leave our selvage on these strips because they're going to get cut off anyways. So you can slide this up or down depending on how much excess you want to cut off. And then I would I use the friction pen, but please note that these pens do not come off with the iron if you use batik fabrics. I've been noticing that, so this is not a batik. So, and then I would draw my line there. But if you don't have a block lock ruler to lock in on this edge, you can do the same thing with just a regular square ruler. Use the 45, line it up with, in the same manner, so that your line, when you're at a 45 here, you can see your line is straight. That's your stitching line, is going to feed in straight into your sewing machine. So you would line that up and then draw your line. So I'm going to just use the block lock because it's just easier. It locks right in. And my strips are starched, so I starched them and pressed them before I even cut them. So starch and press, then cut, and then this step. So I'm just going to let this much overhang, even though these aren't selvage edges. They're not, obviously you can see it's not cut at a 90. So then we'll go ahead and I'll draw this line. And I apologize, I'm left-handed, so I might be in the camera. We're all right-handed when we're at the machine, but we just lefties have to work around it. So there's my line, and so that's on the wrong side of the fabric. Then I take my next strip, and this strip is going to be right side up, and then we're going to slide it underneath, and then so that right sides are together. And then it's a little bit of a mess here. Okay. So I'm going to get my excess up here. And then I can shift this fabric up or down depending on how much of this fabric I want to cut off. So I'll just put it right about there. And you want this point here, or this end of this line, to line up with the edge of your fabric. And then the end of this line to line up with this edge. And you can see this one is not lined up. So I just kind of put my finger there where this one is lined up, and then pivot this one a little. And then once they're both lined up, you can place your pin. And I like to place my fingers like that, and then just that pin didn't want to go in. Place my pin there, far away from the line so that I don't have to remove the pin. I like to place pins, so some people just wing it. So there you have it. So that one is lined up, and I can zoom in on that. So the end of this line is lined up right in this L shape here, right where this edge is, and then the end of this line is meeting up with this edge, this L shape. So let's zoom out. So we'll go ahead and we'll put a little plug in, and I'll put the plug in at a 45. Oh, this is the wrong foot. I just want to use the regular foot with this because we're following the line. So, okay. And I have it on just a regular stitch, no back spacing or anything. The stitch length is 2.2 millimeters. So we'll go ahead, I'll start with needle down, and I'll start my plug, get it almost to the end, lift up my presser foot, push this in right up against the needle, and then lower the presser foot. And then I'll go ahead and stitch, and I'll hold my finger down here. So I'll come to the end and I'll stop in the needle down position. So now this second piece that we had put on is right side up, but like I said before, it can't always be right side up because now it has to be wrong side up. So the way we do it is we just take it in our right hand and just go through it, feed it through our hands until we get down to the bottom. And when we get to the bottom, we take the flap and we turn it so that we're making like a little triangle here. We're making a 90-degree turn. So we were like this, and we just turn it so that now it's wrong side up. So now that it's wrong side up, we put it in a 45 again, just like the first one, and we do the same thing all over again. So I'll take my block lock, decide how much, lock it in to this edge, decide how much I want to get rid of. I'm probably wasting more than I need to, but that's okay. Mark it. Take the next strip, and this strip is right side up. We put it underneath. And we'll go ahead and line it up. Can't really see that one too well. Put my finger up there and then pivot this one. That looks about right. So then I'll place my pins. This is pretty heavy fabric. Okay, there we go. And so we'll just go right ahead and lift my presser foot. The needle is still down. I'm just pushing it right up against there. My finger down here, holding it. And we'll just keep doing that all the way through. Take this, feed it through, and then flip it. Like that. Next piece, right side up, put the excess in there so it's out of my way, or rather so it's not dragging. Stick my finger up there, pivot it down here. So I'm just going to go right off the fabric because that was my last piece. Okay, so then we snip them apart, and so you see you want to check them to make sure they're right, and they are. And I like to be a real heavy 1/4, almost 3/8, and I just eyeball it, and I'll just do them all. Now you can cut these off now, your little little triangles. Sometimes it's easier to cut them after you've pressed it, but I'll just go ahead and what I do is when I'm at the iron, I finger press these I don't press them and then do all that because it's on the bias, you know, it's on the diagonal, so it's going to be stretchy. So I'd rather just finger press it and then hold the iron down, just because it's on the bias. I mean, it's such a short distance, it probably doesn't matter, but I guess I could have done that when I cut the seam allowances, but of course I'm on camera, so I'm forgetting everything. Okay, so that's it, and so, whoops, I forgot this one. And that's it. So then, like I said, at the iron, I'll just finger press each one and hold the iron down, and then I'll press these fold lines that I have at the same time. Fold it in half, press the whole strip, and it'll be ready for attaching to your quilt. So then when I go to press this will come off because these are friction pens, so it'll come off with the heat of the iron. So I usually finger press it at the iron like that, and then just hold it down, hold the iron down on it. And since this is on the bias, you know, if you didn't start your fabric ahead of time like you should have, like I should have with this, it might look a little ripply. So if you use steam with your iron, you can shrink this bias so that it's not so ripply. And I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so I just give it a good finger press. Sorry, I already did the finger press, but and then this is the time where I think it's perfectly fine to use steam on your sashing or binding. And then I just press it down. And these little ripples that I have, because it's muslin, I can do those and shrink them. So I'm not moving it around really. I'm just kind of holding it and shrinking all the ripples out. A lot of people have the block that you stick on it, but I don't have one. So then that's ready. So now you just have to, I usually take it upstairs to my bigger ironing board. I have a 4x8 sheet of, not 4x8, but I have a big sheet of plywood that I made into a little big rectangle. And then you'll just press wrong sides together all the way down. Okay, so we're ready to put the binding on, and I switched to a different quilt, and this is the front of it. And so if we wanted to start our stitching in the lower left, when I turn it over, it'll be the lower right. So we're going to find the center, because you do want to start your quilts in the lower left, because they say that the eye starts up in the upper left and then moves to the lower right. So if we start it in the lower left, then people may not see the junction point. So here's my lower left, and I'll kind of find my center. Now if this were a big quilt, I wouldn't find the center, I would just find a spot in the lower left region where I want my binding strips to overlap. So, for this quilt, it'll be like the center. So I want to make sure that they overlap a little bit more than 1.25 inches. And I already checked this design. I went up and then mitered. This is opposite of what we'll do at the machine. Normally you'll miter first and then go, but It's easier to do it this way. I already checked to make sure I have no seams by the corners, no junction points by the corners, because if I did, then I would move this up or down and just waste some, probably move it up and waste some fabric. But this is fine, and I have plenty of excess to work with when I join the two ends. So here's my center, and that's kind of where I'm going to overlap, somewhere around there. I'll be like a good 2 inches beyond that, and I'll just kind of put a pin there just to hold it. And you don't have to go through both fabrics, both layers, well, all 3 layers I should say. This is my reference point. It's the center on this quilt, but this is my reference point. And normally I start sewing 5 inches, which is like a hand's width away from there. So this is, give it a little tug, this is where I'm going to start. And then I'm going to end, when I come all the way around, about 5 inches from my reference point. So I'm going to end right about here. So I'm just going to put a pin there to let me know that's where I'm going to stop. So I have 3 pins, my reference point, my start point, and my end point. So we'll go ahead and we'll start here. And I have my 1/4 inch foot on, and this foot has some marks on it. So let's see if I can zoom in. Okay, so right now you can see the needle here is going right in the center, so it's at the needle position. On my Janome says 3.5. That's my center. This is my stitch length, 2.2 millimeters. And so we are going to use this stitch here. Let me zoom out. I have things programmed. I have a Janome MC4900, and we're going to forward and back. We're going to make a tie off at the beginning and a tie off when we stop. It takes 3 forward, 3 back, and then goes forward and does the same thing at the end. So then on my 1/4 inch foot, here's my needle in the center, and I line the fabric up. Let's see if I can get that. Like that. Up against that black bar. Let me just put the presser foot down. It's not all the way in, but I'm using one hand. So what I want to do is, on my 1/4 inch foot, I have 3 notches. I actually have 4 because there's one way back here. But this little notch here shows where the needle is. So the needle's right there, and the one in front of it is a 1/4 inch away from the needle. And so as I'm stitching down along, and when I get to this corner down here, I want to stop a 1/4 inch in from the corner. So I'll use this mark to help me, and I'll show you that when we get there. And then when I start again down the next corner, I want to start a 1/4 inch in from this corner. So I want to start a 1/4 inch in and go down. And so that's when we'll use, let's see, this is the mark where the needle is, and here's the other 1/4 inch mark. So I'll line up the edge of the fabric with that 1/4 inch mark right there. So if you have marks like this on your presser foot, and if you have a 1/4 inch presser foot, use them because they're very helpful. So, and this helps to make your corners really nice, your mitered corners, when you stop and start a 1/4 inch away from the edge. So let's get started sewing. Okay, so now remember this little center mark was just a reference point. That's where we're going to overlap our strips. So we're not starting there, we're starting down here 5 inches away from that point. So I'm going to go ahead, I have my, put that in there, move the pin out of the way a little bit, and I'm going to butt it up against this black piece, and I'm going to put a little pressure here, and I'm just going to put my finger down at the bottom. And it's going to go forward and then back. Now, as the edge of the fabric gets onto my arm of my machine, when it just gets on there, that's when I stop. And I usually pull out the pin from the corner, and I mark this edge here on the binding with a pin. But I'm not going to use this pin because I like to use these because they slide in easier, the little glass head pins. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick a pin on the binding right at this edge. And if you're going to err on the side of long or short, always err on the side of in more towards the quilt. So, because it just allows your corner to have more flexibility. So, I'm just going to leave it there like that. And when I get and this is the part where we use this notch, so when the notch that's in front of the needle, the 1/4 inch notch in front of the needle, when the edge of the fabric gets to that notch, that's when I stop. So I hope you can see that. So I'm getting closer, so I'm going to slow down. Here's the notch here, so I have about 1/4 inch left to go before this edge, before this pin gets to this mark. So I'll just go like one at a time. I can go one more stitch, and that looks good. So this pin is right at this notch. So I'm going to hit my backspace button to end this stitch. It'll go back 3 and forward 3. Everybody's machine is different, so I just hold down the foot and it's done. So now at this point, this is where a lot of times I forget because it's a habit just to cut your threads. But at this point, you lift your needle, take your pin out, and usually leave it somewhere where I can get it. And what you want to do is you want to have a nice long thread, maybe about 8 inches, just something, because we're going to hand stitch the mitered corners with this piece. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut it right about there. You're going to want to pull so that both threads are on the same side. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to, since we're going to be mitering the front, when we miter this corner, you'll see we're going to be working on the front. We want to pull this top thread to the front. So I just use one of those needles that where you can, there's a hole in the top, I forget what they're called, and the thread just snaps in. And I'll just feed it right through. So then we'll have 2 long threads sticking out, and we can just leave them sticking out. So then at this point, what we want to do, we want to take our strip and we want to make a 45 with it. So we take it and we just pull it over like that, and you'll see what happens is, and you can use, if you have a table with a ruler, you can line up this bottom edge with this bottom edge. You should form a straight line. You should form a 90-degree angle right here, and a 90 here. And so then if you like, you can use your fingers, or you can use a stiletto, or you can use your thread ripper, and you want to stick the tool right in the edge here and pull that over. And so when you pull it over, the bottom edge should be all lined up, and this fold here is right along the edge. Now the one thing you want to make sure is you do not want to have it like that, where you can see the bottom strip, because then you don't have enough bulk here, enough fabric to work with when you turn this corner, and then your corner will be pulling and it won't be a square 90-degree corner. So if you're going to err on the side of anything, err on the side of like more bulk. And I say that lightly because I really don't want that either, but if you're going to err on the side of anything, err on more bulk. So we'll go ahead, and you can see I'm off a little bit here. So that just means that I have to like scooch that down more. And that looks good. So then at this point, I would take a pin, and this is still out a little. And I would place the pin not in the center of this strip, not close to the edge, but close to this fold. And I'm only going through the first layer of fabric because I really don't want to create a lot of bulk. And so that'll hold it there nicely. So then you'll take it and you'll pivot it and you'll put it back in the machine. Now you'll want to keep your two little strands out, and we'll put it back in. This time, however, we're going to line up this back edge with the back 1/4 inch mark. So here's where the needle would go, and we want the edge of this fabric lined up with this notch in the back. So now our needle's going to start stitching 1/4 inch in. So, and it's the same stitch forward and back, and I'm going to tug on this binding just a hair to make it nice and snug. Put my finger here so I don't have any bulk from this needle. And then as soon as I go needle down a few more stitches, I take this out and save it for next time. And then we just stitch all the way down. And when this bottom edge gets to this arm, I stop and I place a pin again. So I'm on my arm of my machine, so I take my pin, I mark my corner, and I stop when this pin gets to this 1/4 inch mark that's in front of the needle. One more. And if you can't just make one more stitch with your foot pedal, you can always use your needle up, needle down button to make your one more stitch. So I'm about right there. I'm a little shy of it, but that's okay. I'd rather be in more than out more. So I'm going to hit my back button. Okay, and I'm going to remember now to not cut my threads needle up. I mean, not cut them short. Have them about a good 8 inches and cut it. Okay, so here's a tip. As I was going around in a hurry, I forgot to pull when I got done with a corner, like I did at the beginning, I pulled, let me show you, I pulled the top thread through with my little needle with the slot in it. Well, I forgot because I was in a hurry on the other sides. But here's another trick. If you're not worried about wasting thread, so these are the 2 corners that I forgot. When you start back up, you can leave the bobbin tail long, and so then you'll have already 2 bobbin pieces down at the bottom to use. So my bobbin here is not real long, but I think I can use that to miter my corner. So I'm just going to use those instead of fiddling with that. So I'm going to go ahead and where my scissors. I'm going to trim the top ones so I don't forget. This is the one here that I could take it and I could go in there and feed it in if I wanted. So I guess I'll just show you. If you would have forgotten, here's my needle with the slot. And because you can just pull this back and you can just kind of feed it through. Doesn't have to be exact, but somewhere in the point there where the other ones are. You can see they started right about there. And leave a little slack so that it doesn't pull out of this as you're putting it through all that bulk. And then get your finger in there and pull it out because it might come out. So then now I do have 2 long ones. So now I'm down at the last corner here. So here's my long thread and I'm going to feed it through. So I'm going to take my slotted pin or needle, put that in there, give myself a little slack and just go right through, right where it came out. So now it's on the front. Okay. And so remember I'm stopping here, and so I'm going to make my, and I've been using my finger, sometimes it's quicker for me. Give myself a little bit more bulk there. Okay, so now we're going to put that in and we're going to stop here. So again, we're going to line it up, threads in. We're going to line up the back edge with that back 1/4 inch mark. You can see it. Push my finger down on this pin. Get my binding ready. down. Sometimes I forget that too. So much to remember. And this is where I'm going to stop. So I'm going to put my finger there. And hit my back button. Needle up. So now we can just cut it as normal. So I can take these pins out. So now my reference point was right around here. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that that needle is in there, the pin, at a nice 90-degree angle to the edge. So we want this here to be a 90 because we're going to use that pin to help us measure. So I have 2.5-inch strips. So you divide that by 2, which is 1 1/4 inches, and you want to go 1 1/4 inches past this pin and make a mark, and that's what we're going to cut. So, so here, what we want to do is we want to put our hand where our stitching ended and give it a nice, firm tug. And we're going 1 1/4 inches beyond this pin. So we take our 1 1/4 inch mark, which is right there, and we want to line that mark up with the pin. So, and what you also want to do is you can use you can use the edge here to line up other marks to make sure that this here is, what do I want to say, it's not that it's straight, but it's forming a 90 here, a 90 there, so that your line isn't drawn on an angle. So I'm checking everything here. You can go in a little bit. So this line, this line, this, and this all line up. And my 1 1/4 inch is right here, and there's the needle. It's right on the needle. This line, here, and here are all lined up on this folded edge. So now I can go ahead and mark. And when you cut this, you'll want to cut it below the mark because then it'll make our joint even tighter. And with me working with muslin and I didn't starch this, I'm going to have a lot of stretch in this. So hopefully you won't have as much of a problem. But you can use your rotary cutter to make a straight cut. I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can get it right. And draw that line all the way. And I'm cutting below the mark, as you can see. So the mark's pretty much cut off. So that's that one. So we use the same needle now with the other flap or strip. And we give it a nice tug. And again, so now we have to turn our ruler. And our 1 1/4 inch mark is right there. And you want to line that up with the needle. Actually, this ruler is kind of not as good for this, but that's okay. You can do it. So this is lined up with the folded edge. 1 1/4 inch mark is lined up with the needle. And this raw edge here is lined up with this line going all the way in. Take our pen again. This time I'll try to get to the edge. I can. And then again, we're going to cut so that we cut below the line. It's just to make it tighter, especially since I don't have a walking foot on my machine right now, because I like to use my 1/4-inch foot, and I don't have the fancy Janome with the walking foot. So okay, so now here's our 2 pieces, and they're overlapping each by 1 1/4. So now we can take the pin out. So now these 2 strips are going to be joined right sides together. So the right side is, this whole thing is the right side. You recall this whole piece here is the right side, and the wrong side's inside for both of them. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to open it up and place one down, and then open up the other one and just leave it, and then that'll be the right sides together, and we'll stitch the 2 side points just like when we did our sashing. But this can become very cumbersome doing this, and you know, because a lot of people like to draw a line. I do. A lot of people like to pin it. I do that as well. So what I do is I do it the same way as when I was attaching the strips together, except for one important difference. And let me zoom out a little bit. When we go to mark this line you can see is going to be this way. So if I were to go ahead and do my same method that I used with the piece, joining the strips together, and if I would have taken this top piece with the wrong side up and lined up the 45 with the bottom, okay, just like before, what you see is the line that gets drawn goes from inside this L to the outside, and that's not what we want. So because this is put on, you know, the opposite way, we have to do this step the opposite way. So if we're going to do that same method, we have to do it this way and line up the 45 with the top edge of this top piece. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to kind of, so I know this is my top edge because here it was here, and so I open it up and this is the top edge. So I'm just going to go like this to make life easier. My top edge, line up my 45 with the top edge, and now this time there's no excess here. So this point of this ruler has to be with the corner of that piece, because remember, we cut this exactly perfectly right. So we have to be pretty accurate. So I'm going to get my eyes closed down in there. Hope I'm not stretching my fabric too much. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. Friction pen will come off on here, I'm pretty sure. I never try it because I get nervous, so one day I'll experiment. So that's our line. So now we can go and place that. So remember, it was like this. And we take one, and right side is up. This is our bottom piece. And then this one, we open it up and it's right side down, and it makes a 90. And so, well, we put it on as a 90. And so what we want to do is fold that over. I know you'll have more bulk to deal with than I do. It's usually easier, the corner here that's not, doesn't have any lines, it's usually easier to just get those 2 points. Put your finger down, put that one there, and then there. And then you can place a pin. Try not to stretch your bias. And then you can place a pin here. Okay. And so then you'll just stick it in the machine and we'll stitch down this line. So I have to change my foot. And I'm going to start with a plug. And since this is on a 45, I'll start my plug on a 45 so that when it feeds in, it doesn't bother anything there. And I'm going to start it with just a regular straight stitch with no back stitching because we don't need that now. And I'll start it with needle down. Zoom in a little bit, and I'll bring it right to the end. Let's see, to be over a little bit. That's fine. Get it so it's just off the fabric or off the plug, and I'm going to lift my presser foot, and I'm going to kind of just put that right up against the needle. And make sure I'm straight down here. Hold my finger down here. Make sure I'm lined up, I should say. And we'll just go ahead and stitch. You can stop and make sure you're still lined up. And go right off the fabric. I do. Like I said, I'm not sure if other people can. Hold your finger here so you don't stretch the bias out. And cut it. And then you always want to check it. It looks good. And then like I said before, I always cut my, see, that looks perfect. Perfectly lined up, and so I always cut mine at like 3/8 of an inch, just to give me a little bit in case of fraying. Cut up my plug. And then this, since it's on the bias, I would take it to the iron and press it open, maybe try to shrink it up a little bit, and you know, use the steam and whatnot, and just kind of make it like that, and press it open. So, okay, so now I have it turned over so that I don't stretch out this muslin, and kind of finger press that a little bit. And there's steam on this iron, so I'm just going to kind of hold it just to kind of shrink it up a little bit with the steam. And then now to get this, to turn it over, and if you want to get this corner crisp again, you can. So, but I would definitely leave it back down and do it, and at the same time you can shrink it up. So notice I'm not doing the quilt, the batting, the actual quilt, because they say that you don't want to put steam on your quilt because, for one thing, Well, if it's polyester batting, you don't want to iron it at all because the polyester will melt. And if it's cotton, you kind of don't want to flatten down your batting. And if it's also if it's cotton, you don't really want to use steam on it because the steam could stay in there and keep it wet. So you kind of want to just do it without it being, you don't want to turn it over and do it because then you're ironing on your quilt. So that's done. And so now what we can do is we can take it back to the machine and we can sew from here to here. Now I've got some fullness there, and I have to worry about that because this is muslin, like I said, and it's stretchy. So I'm going to put a lot of pins so that I don't have any ripples when I go to sew, especially since I don't have my walking foot on. Okay. So now I'm going to place my pins, and I'm going to use these because they're a little bit stiffer, but I'm not going to penetrate all the way through. And I'm going to place them not close to the raw edge where I'm going to stitch because I don't want to stretch this out anymore. I'm going to place them close to the fold. So I'm going to go in, I'm starting in the center. Here's my this is my area that I'm going to be putting together. So I hate to even pull it up, but you can see. So I'm going to place a pin in the center this way, but close to the fold. And this is my seam here. And I'm just going to try and grab the top fabric, and I'm going to make this as wide as I can. I could have made that even wider so I don't have any bulk. Okay, and so I'm going to do that all the way down because I don't really want to take out my pins because it seems like when I work with muslin, especially if I take the pins out, by the time I get to the end here, it'll pucker and I'll have a pleat. So I know it looks bumpy here, but I'm going to use my stiletto like this. I'm going to press down as I go. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start stitching this. And I'm going to start ahead of where I backspaced so that I'm backspacing up here away from this so it don't create too much bulk here. So I'm going to use my forward and back stitch. Like I said, I want to err on the side to the right of the stitching, if anything. Okay, so I'm starting before my forward and back from the last time. I'm going to have my stiletto out and ready in case I need to flatten this for any ripples. Now my stiletto, when I have this red rubber part on, will not go in any farther. I don't have to worry about the needle hitting it. So it's kind of nice that way. So I'll leave that right here, right on the side here. And we're ready to go. And I'm also going to keep my finger here to push in if I need to. Sometimes that works better than the stiletto. I'm going to start with the needle down, forward, back. So far so good. Okay, now I'm starting to see a little bit of fullness. So I'm going to push like that. Going over the join right now. Okay, so now I'm getting some fullness, and I'm going to just press down with my stiletto. This is always tricky, so I'm kind of holding the back. Make sure it, and I'm almost slanting it to make sure that I stay pushed up against. You can see the pucker there, but I'm pressing down. I should have slowed down my machine. I'm going to have a little bit of fullness right here. So I'm coming to the end. So I'm going to pull on this slightly. So I've got it pulled. Actually, I'm not going to use my stiletto. I'm just going to use my finger now because I'm down at the edge. And I'm pulling here and here. You can see that little bit of a pucker, and I want to make sure that I line up. So I'm going to lift up, hold that down, and like I said, you won't have this, and I'm going to come right onto my next line. I'm going to go past the line, 3 stitches. I'm going to back that up a little. And I'm going to hit my back button. What I did was I almost went to the left of the line, so I took my hand wheel and I turned it back to get the needle out, and then I just turned it back in. I can do that with this machine, but some of them you can't. So I hit my back button, so it does the locking stitch. And that's it. Looks good. So now we're ready to turn the binding around and do the blanket stitch. So before we turn it around, you'll want to go and clean up all your edges. A lot of times if you have an ironing board, it's nice to just let it hang over, can't see, hang over the side of the ironing board, and then just, trim. But make sure you don't trim your long pieces that we worked so hard to get over here on the corners, because we'll need those. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this up. This next step is a little controversial. This was the back, this was the back of it, and I trimmed up all the edges, and now we're ready to turn the binding. Some people like to take like a mini iron. You wouldn't want to use your big iron because you don't want to iron the quilt, but you could take a mini iron, dry, and you could go ahead and just try to flatten these edges, because it just makes it easier when you turn it. This is a little flatter, and you want to try to just stay on the binding. Some people don't even like to do that because people like their binding to be full. They don't want to smash down this batting here. So I guess if it's a show quilt, you wouldn't want to do this step. So it's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and just iron it a little bit with this, and I'm going to try to just stay off the quilt. So, and my iron is so lame. It's really not even that hot. I have it on the highest setting, but I'm lifting up when I go into the corners so that I don't hit the quilt. And just finger press it first, and then kind of then in the corner. So, okay. So with that done, we're going to pull this, turn it over, and everything's going to come to the front now. Okay, so this is still the back, and I'm going to take it and flip it over. And here's my long threads are still all here. I hope you can see them. And so, let me pull this down a little bit. Okay. So the first thing I do is I just go ahead and I, put my finger on the corner and turn all of my miters in. Make sure they look pretty, even from the back. That will go to the inside now. Put my finger there and just turn it. That looks pretty. That'll come in. I wanted to show you something that happened with this corner. So when I was on this side of the fabric, and this is the way it looks. When I did this fold here, what happened was I actually aired on the side of too much excess. So and it's really a lot of excess, so I guess I couldn't see very well. So this corner is going to give me some problems. So like I said, if you're too short here, or if you're too much, it's not good either way. So when I go ahead and turn this, you can see that this sticks out right here, that excess. And so my line or my edge coming across is going to have problems here. But we're going to try and work with that, because I don't want to cut that or anything. So anyways, so we're going to start down here sewing, but we're going to start maybe 3 stitches in front of this corner. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn up. I know this is covering, was just a practice quilt. And I'm a lefty, so I know I'm going to be stitching this way on the machine, so I want to place my needles this way with the head, because I don't want to have to take them out, not my needles, my pins. So for me to do that, I have to pivot the fabric. So I'm going to place them kind of in the center of this width, so that I don't have to take them out. And that's fine, because I'm using a zipper foot here, and the needle is going to go right in this notch right here. There's a little notch. Make sure. That's where the needle's going to go. So it's going to travel down. It's never going to be on this binding, so it'll never cause any pressure on the binding or anything. And it's going to go 3 straight stitches, and then it's going to swing over 3 millimeters. So it's not even going to hit these pins. So, anyways, so before I do this corner, I want to put maybe a pin in the center. I'm going to go down here to the other side and pin this center. I have to pivot it. This is my join here. I'm going to go a little bit above it. Try not to go through all the layers to create any bulk. Go halfway in between. And I'll kind of come down here, place a pin. I like to pin it, and I'll show you why. These are flimsy pins, so sometimes they bend. And so here's my little thread that we're going to use to hand stitch the corners. And place a pin there. So now, as my machine comes down and it's riding down this edge, when I get to this corner, I do not want to have this happen, where the foot runs in to this flap. I want this flap to be folded in first, so that when my machine comes down, and I have to fiddle with this to make it square, because we got an issue there with me using too much bulk, but I'll have to fiddle with that in a minute. But we want it to just come down straight and just ride nice and smoothly, and have this flap be on top. So this has to go in first. Okay, so like I said, we're coming down with our machine. We want this side in first, and hold that out. So we place our pin, and you can use your stiletto or your thread ripper to help you with that, but I find sometimes it's easier just to use your fingers. And I bend a lot of these needles, but what are you going to do? I like them. So I'm going to pull this up. Okay. Okay, so it's all pinned and ready to go in the machine. I will have to remove my foot with the screwdriver and put this zipper foot in. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so I have a Janome MC4900, and it has a lot of stitches and a lot of ways to program things and so on. Now the blanket stitch that we want to do is in the wrong direction. So here it is here. It's number 70 right there. But we want the straight line to be on the left side and the jump over to be going to the right. So we have to mirror image this stitch. And it's not user friendly on these Janomes. So the way you do it, if anybody has one, I'll just go through it real quick. I don't know if the new ones are more user friendly. This machine's about 10 years old. So, anyways, so it's in mode 2. You can see up there that that stitch is in mode 2. So you go over here. It's in mode 1 now. You go to mode 2 and you choose, it was stitch 70. So you go down here, 70, and you can see the stitch that's showing is going in the wrong direction, because we want our stitches, we want our straight line to be on the left and the jump to be on the right. We want it to jump onto this. So what you do, the first thing you do, and believe me, this took me forever to figure this out. I had to write it down, and I still have to look at it. So what you do the first time you want to bring it up, see, I already have it saved. So, but the first time you want to bring it up, you pressed your 70, and then you press this TOM, turn over memory key. So you press that, and then you'll see on the screen it's showing it
it doesn't even show it in a vertical position anymore. I mean, they really make it hard for you. But this position is the mirror image of the original. When it's facing up like that, it's the mirror. And you can see this is blinking because it thinks that I want to add other designs and so on, because you know you can make a pattern if you want. Well, I don't want to do that. I just want this stitch the whole way through. So I want this blinking light to go underneath here. So I come over here, the backspace button, the edit button, let me zoom out. We'll take this cursor back. Okay, so now it's under there. So, but now I want to make sure, because I already played with this stitch and I know how I want the stitch length and I know how much I want it to jump over. Right now, if I hit the stitch width is how long the stitch is when it jumps over. That's your stitch width. If the default is 2.0, that's too small. So you can take, and it goes off the screen real quick, but you can hit stitch width and you can take it all the way up to as big as the swing is on your machine, you know, the width of your presser foot. 7.0 is too big. So I played with it, you know, a while ago, and I like 3.0 for it to swing over. Now the stitch length, the default is 1.5. That's way too small. So, but here's the thing, if I try to make it bigger, like 3.0, like how we like our top stitching to be longer, you can't. On my machine, the highest I can go is 2.5, which is fine. It looks really good. So those are my settings. And so at this point I can just start stitching and it'll work just fine. But if you wanted to save this so that you don't have to do it again, this is how you save it on my machine. Okay. Okay, so to save this setting, I press this stop call key. Now, this M back and forth, they call it the stop call key, I guess because it's, you can call it or you can save it that way. So there's 5 slots that I can save 5 different patterns in mode 2. So you press this to save it, and it takes me to this stock call area. So at this point, it's showing me I have M1. I already have something saved in M1, which is actually this design. I already have something saved in there. If I want to go to M2, now this M has nothing to do with modes up here, those M's, mode 1, M1. No, it's a completely different M. It's like your memory, okay? They could have used a different letter, but they didn't. So there's stock call key. If you hit that button again, it'll take you to the second memory slot, M2. Well, M2, I also have this design saved, or this stitch pattern saved, but my stitch length is a little bit longer. And it's at like 3 point, not my stitch length, my swing over is 3.5. So if I hit stock call again, you'll see the third slot. Well, this is a completely different stitch. It's stitch number 71 that I had programmed in there. So if I wanted to see that stitch now, if I wanted to see this stitch that I had saved, I have to hit TOM button, and they show you here. That means you're getting it out of the file. That's what this arrow means. So you hit the TOM button, and it takes me to that stitch 71. This isn't the one we want, but this is just one of the stitches that I programmed. It's a heavier blanket stitch. It's going in the direction I like. You know, it's got the parameters I like, but it's double stitches everything, and I don't want that for this project. So now to get out of this, you just come down here and hit the clear button. It doesn't clear that design, it just takes you back to mode 2, the first stitch in mode 2. So we got to go back to stock call key. Well, wait, wasn't I saving that for you? Yeah, I was. I was saving it for you. So let's go back and save it. So we're in mode 2. We're going to call up 70. Sorry. Okay, so we're in 70, but we're in the wrong one. And we want to program that. So we're going to go TOM, turn over memory. And it turned it over, but the 2 is blinking here. We want to edit to get that. So now it's the 1, so we have 1 stitch here blinking. We want to change our stitch width, to 3.0. We want to change our stitch length to 2.5. And now we want to save that. So we have to save it in this stock area. So we have to hit stock call key. M1 is taken already. You can see it has something in it. M2 is taken. M3 is taken like I showed you before. All those 3 were taken. M4 is empty. So if I want to save it in M4, see how this button says, has an arrow saying I want to save it in this slot. The arrow is going in. We hit the M button down here. And so it saved it. I did it kind of fast, but the hourglass went and it saved that now. So now if I want to call that pattern that we just saved, say I'm out of mode 2, say I clear out and I'm just, you know, go to mode 1, mode 3, mode 1. If I want to call that pattern back, I have to actually go into mode 2. Then I go to stock call, because remember, you can either call them or save them. And I press that button. Now, I saved it in M4. So you have to keep hitting the stock call button to get to M4. M2, M3, M4. So there's the one that we just saved. And when we want to call it, when we want to bring it out, we hit the TOM button. And there it is. It was 3.0 on the stitch width, 2.5 on the stitch length, and so we can just start stitching. Now, I have this design saved twice now in here, but that's okay. I mean, I'll just keep going with the video here, but so that's how you do it. It's, believe me, it's not user-friendly at all. Okay, so let's get to stitching this design. I went ahead and I put a pin here and another pin there because I will be taking this one out. And I'm showing it, here's the corner, but I'm starting, you can see my, see, you can see. Okay, you can see my needle right there is going to start about 1/4 of an inch in front of this corner. We want the jump over to bite this little flap on every corner. So my machine takes 3 stitches and then it jumps over. So if each stitch is 3 millimeters, because this is my blanket stitch now, not 3 millimeters, I'm sorry, my stitch length is 2.5 and my jump over is 3 millimeters. So if my stitch length is 2.5, then the first 3 stitches will be 7.5 mils. So 6 mils is about 1/4 of an inch. So 7 mils will be a little bit bigger than a quarter. So when I get to the third stitch, so it goes 1, 2, 3, then it jumps over. When I get to the third one, I have to go, just use my needle up, needle down button here. And I might have to shift the fabric so that it bites right where I want it to bite. So we're going to go ahead and start that. And this stitch will make a locking stitch at the beginning, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up my bobbin thread, just like we do when we're long arm quilting. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to use my needle up, needle down. I'm going to hold my top thread, use my needle up, needle down button to pull up that bobbin thread. That's kind of part of, it's going to be one stitch of my locking stitch, but that's okay. And then I'm going to do needle down, and then I'm going to go real slow. I'm going to hold my threads here, and it's hard for me to see because I turned off the light. I didn't turn it off, but I put tape over it, so I hope I can see it. Here's my threads, my 2 threads for later, and my pin is in there. And I'm going to leave it in there just for the first 1 stitch or so. So, locking. Okay. So now it's really in the way. So I'm going to move it over. I'm going to press down with my finger. So I think that was 1. So 2. And I'm going to use my needle up to see if it's going to jump over or if it's going to go. No, it's going to go and take another stitch. So I am going to use my, okay, there, I'm using my hand wheel to make this next stitch, and it's going right down into the corner where I want it to go. I don't know if you can see that, but let's see. It's going right down in the corner. That's my 3rd straight stitch, and then it's going to jump over onto this point right here. And I'm going to hold my finger down, and I'm going to do needle down. I'm going to let it finish its downward stitch. Whoops, my finger was in the way. And now it's going to jump over. So I'm going to use my stiletto because I don't want to get poked. So I'm going to use the needle up button just to make sure I like where it's jumping over. And then I'm going to use my hand wheel to bring it down, and it's going just in the right spot. So I'll use the needle down, and there you go. And so now it's going to jump back, and I'm going to let it because it's going to jump back in the same spot, and I'm going to go needle down. And now I'm going to pivot. So it made that stitch there that I wanted. I'm going to keep the needle down. I'm going to lift my presser foot, and I'm going to go. Now you can see that this side of this presser foot, I got so far into the corner that it's hitting. So I'm going to lift up, needle up for my last stitch, and I'm going to scooch the fabric over here, and there's stitch number 1. So it's right where I want it to be. And here's my 2 threads, and now we're ready to go. So I can take this pin out, and we're ready to go. I have to kind of get down in there to see without my glasses even, because there's no light. I'm moving these out of the way. I'm just going to lift my presser foot so I can get these out of the way. Okay. Making sure it's not going to hit that pin. So you notice as I'm sliding, that since the pins are going in that direction, they don't bother me. But I forgot, when I get down to the corners, I like to take the pins out that are close to the corners, so I like to put those pins in the other direction. So let me just place this one in this direction. I hope I'll remember the other ones, but if not, that's okay too. And this one's far enough away, but I'll just put one here because I'm going to have to remove this pin. And just use my finger, and probably can't see that. So I'll just stick one there. Okay. Okay, so I'm coming to the corner, and I forgot to turn this pin around, but oh well. I'll take it out. Okay, I'm going to start counting. And take this pin out. See, that's what's nice, they're flexible. And I'm going to put my finger there. Make sure that corner looks good, relatively good. So now it's coming 1, 2. It's already in the corner and it wants to take one more stitch. So I have to back up. So I'm going to lift my presser foot, pull it out, and I can see the thread. I can see the thread is in the front and the needle is behind that. And so I'll go needle down, watching my fingers. And now when I go needle up, it should swing over. And it does. And now it's going to bite that. So I'll just go needle down, needle up, needle down. And now I'll pivot. So I actually, if I put this down, you could see the presser foot is far away from this edge. So I can go pivot back and go one more stitch. So I'm going to go needle up. And then I'm going to use my wheel to go needle down, but I'm going into the binding. So I'm going to lift up my presser foot, pull the fabric forward a little, and then go right down in. So that corner was here. Okay. Needle down. Got a little bit of bunching here. Okay, so coming to the corner, I want to start counting. Push that out. Okay. Okay, it's swung over, swings back. Now it's going to take 3 stitches. 1, 2, and I am going to lift it up and make this a longer stitch. This third one a longer stitch. So that it bites. I pushed the fabric up a little bit. See, now it's going to swing right over, and it bit this, and I'm going to do needle down because now I'm going to pivot. And it's perfect. Whoops. Famous last words. Okay. So this is the last side. Okay, so I'm going to pull this one out so that I could ease this. This was that side where, and I want to meet up with my thread from the beginning because we're at the end, and I can take all of these out too because they're going to be causing issues with this, how I want to smooth this. Okay. Okay, so we started here with the straight, so we want to end here with a blanket jump over right where we started. So we want to start counting. 1, 2, 3, and so our jump over is far away, but we're going to do it anyways. Let it jump back, and then 1, 2, and now here I could lift up, and because here's where we wanted to make that jump over, so I could just pull it forward a hair just to like make a half stitch. So, and now it'll jump. And then we'll go needle up, needle down, and now at this point I want to make my locking stitch because I'm already past where I started. So I could go all the way to the corner and lock it there. It'll be less noticeable, and they're all going to be straight stitches, so I'm just going to do that. And now I'll hit my backspace button to lock it. Okay, so that's it. So now we'll bury this thread, so we'll make it long. And so now we'll just take all our pins out, and we'll bury our threads. We'll do our miters, bury our threads, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Okay, I thought I would show some tips on putting on this binding with the blanket stitch. So I already stitched, let's make sure you could see, I already sewed, this is the front, and I already sewed the binding to the back all the way around the quilt. I hope you can see that. I know it's black. And what happened, what I did in the corners is, you know, I came down and I sewed all the way down, and I stopped a 1/4 inch away from the edge here, so I stopped right here. So I sewed all the way down, stopped there. And then I left my threads, let's see, which two are they? these two. I left them long because I'm going to use them, well, one of them, so I left them long. And then I came and I folded, did the 45-degree fold, and then I came around to do this side, and to sew down this side. And I left, when I started on this side, I left the tails long as well. So here's like the top and the bottom thread for this side. I left them long. So I'm only going to use 2 of these 4 threads that I left long, so you are going to waste, a little bit, but that's okay. It just makes it easier to, when you do the corners at the end, when you hand stitch the corners, so you use 2 of these threads. So then when you come around, when you're all done sewing your binding on and you come around to push everything around to the front, you'll see the 2 threads that you want to use are actually these 2 bobbin threads. They're the ones that are right here. So those you want to leave in, because those are the ones we're going to use to hand stitch. And you can make them even, so you could thread your needle, cut them even when you get ready to do it. And then the other 2 over here that were originally your top threads, these 2 that are right here, they're here and then in there, okay, your 2 top threads, those are the ones that you'll trim off. So I'll go ahead and I'll trim those 2 off. So then when I turn this around, and now remember, when I sew this, the fabric's on the left, and you're going to turn this around. Whoops. Take this, you're going to flip that in. Remember, we're going to be stitching down this way, and we want to make sure that this fold gets folded in first when we do our miter. So you want to make sure your 2 threads are out. You could put a piece of duct tape there if you want, but it's fine. So I usually do this on the table. And so when I place my pins, I normally place them so that they're this way, so that I don't have to prick my finger and I don't have to take them out because I'm using a zipper foot. But in the corners, I put them this way so that I could pull them out, because I want everything to be really smooth in the corners. So like down here, I'll be putting the pins this way. And I always put them in slanted. I try to actually stay away from where that 1/4 inch seam line is, because I can't, you can't stick the pin in there good. So I try to stay away, and I try to make it as big, as long as I can. And that's actually really far away, but that's all right. And I'll fix this when I lay it on the table. I'm just trying to show you. I know it's uneven. So we'll push that side in first, and then this side will go in. And then of course, I always start up a little bit to make sure. And actually I do the whole side. I start at the center, so I'm kind of doing this backwards, but I'll show you in a minute. So, and then you can fool around with this miter to make this corner fit. And I'll stick the pin right in this inside corner. And I'm just going to stick it like slanted straight down in there. and then that's where I'll sew. So then I'll sew this corner before I even do the sides. It just makes life easier because then I could take the pin out. So I'll take this, and then I think I have one already done down here. I have one done, pinned. It's really nice and perfect. So I'll go ahead and I'll show you on that one. So let me just take this out because I don't want to accidentally sew it. Okay. When I pinned, you can see the whole side is pinned, but I started in the center. And I put one pin in the center, then I went in the center of that pin in the corner, and then, you know, in the center of those two, and the center of those two, and so on. And so, that's the way I did it. So I'll use a regular needle, and I'll take both threads and trim it so I could trim the two threads flush. I think I already did. Okay. And then I go ahead and I hold the corner and I just slide it in there, and I go halfway down this line, which is right there. So I slide it in and I get real close to this fold because I'm doing a ladder stitch. Don't want to go to the point because you'll distort everything. And then try to get your other threads out. And then hold it when you pull so you don't pull everything out of whack. And then make sure I'm still on camera. So I'm going to do a ladder stitch. So I'm going into this fold. We're going to slide it in there, come halfway up, the bottom flap. Don't lose my thread this time. Give it a little tug, but hold this while you tug it, else you'll pull this whole thing out. Done that before. And then I'm going to go in the top flap in the same exact location, go halfway down this area here. So I'm in the top flap, that's how I'm traveling. Go down into the bottom flap right next to that. And just in the top layer, and then come right back up into the top flap. Into this point. Okay, and now we're going to go right into the down into the corner and travel a couple stitches away, back stitch so that I can have a base for my knot. So I'm just back stitching like one stitch. And now we're going to knot this. Let's see. Double knot. And it went right in because I heard it snap in. Okay. So here, just to get a good look at the blanket stitch up close on the front side. It's really cute. Oop. So it just looks really cute. I'm really pleased with it.